Welcome back to Shawn Thinking Out Loud. I'm Shawn Armstrong. Today we're talking about something that makes polite society nervous, which usually means we're near the truth. We're talking about strength. We're talking about responsibility. We're talking about the lie that harmlessness is the same thing as virtue. Let me say this up front so the professionally offended can save themselves some cardio. This isn't an argument for cruelty. This isn't an argument for bullying. This isn't an argument for men acting like unstable idiots because they watch 3 fight videos online and now think they're gladiators with Wi-Fi. This is an argument for controlled strength, disciplined strength, moral strength. The kind of strength that can do damage, understands that it can do damage, and chooses restraint because restraint actually means something when you have options. A harmless man isn't automatically a good man. He may be good. He may be gentle. He may be decent. But harmlessness by itself isn't virtue. A rabbit is harmless. That doesn't make the rabbit morally impressive. It makes the rabbit lunch. And that's where modern culture has gone stupid. We've spent decades telling people, especially young men, that aggression is bad, competition is bad, strength is suspicious, confidence is toxic, masculinity is dangerous, discipline is oppression, and personal responsibility is some kind of cruel burden invented by people who own belts and expect adults to use them. Then everyone acts shocked when we produce weak, resentful, anxious, bitter people who can't defend themselves, can't lead themselves, can't control themselves, and can't handle ordinary pressure without collapsing into grievance. Who could have predicted that raising people like fragile porcelain figurines would produce fragile people? Only everyone with a functioning brain. So naturally, the experts missed it. The material we're working from today makes a hard point. A person has to recognize the darker parts of himself. He has to wrestle with them. He has to integrate them. He has to know what he's capable of. Because if he doesn't know what lives inside him, it still lives there. It just operates without adult supervision. And that's where people become dangerous in the wrong way. Not strong, dangerous. Not disciplined, uncontrolled. Not virtuous, naive, bitter, and eventually destructive. There's a massive difference between a peaceful man and a harmless man. A peaceful man has the capacity to act, but chooses peace. A harmless man has no choice. He behaves because he can't do anything else. That's not morality. That's limitation. And limitations aren't virtues. Now, this issue goes beyond martial arts. It goes beyond self-defense. It goes beyond men and masculinity, although, yes, we're absolutely going to talk about that, because apparently saying young men need discipline now qualifies as a hate crime against softness. This is political. This is cultural. This is spiritual. This is about how civilization survives. Because civilization doesn't survive by producing citizens who are passive, frightened, dependent, and helpless. Civilization survives when people can govern themselves. And to govern yourself, you need more than rights. You need responsibility. You need boundaries. You need self-command. You need the ability to say no to yourself before you start demanding the whole world say yes to every impulse that crawls across your skull. We live in a culture obsessed with rights, my freedom, my identity, my truth, my expression, my comfort, my validation, my safe space, my emotional temperature, my personal weather report. And yes, rights matter. I spent 23 years in the Army. I don't need a lecture on rights from some political toddler whose idea of sacrifice is bad hotel Wi-Fi. Rights matter, but rights without responsibility turn citizens into spoiled dependents. Rights without duty turn adults into consumers of civilization instead of defenders of it. Rights without self-control become excuses. And once a society loses responsibility, it starts confusing comfort with freedom. That's how you get a culture where everyone has a claim, everyone has a complaint, everyone has a diagnosis, everyone has a demand, and almost nobody has a duty. That's the battlefield for today's episode. We're going to take this in 5 parts. First, we're going to talk about why harmlessness isn't virtue. Second, we'll get into rights and responsibility and why one without the other produces adult children with legal vocabulary. Third, we're going to talk about competence, especially masculine competence, and why calling strength tyranny is one of the dumbest cultural moves of the last half century. Fourth, we're going to deal with the shadow. That means the part of you that can do ugly things. The part people like to pretend belongs only to villains, Nazis, tyrants, criminals, and everyone conveniently outside the mirror. Fifth, we'll bring it home with peace. Because real peace doesn't come from weakness. Real peace comes from strength under control. So let's get into it. This episode is a good place to mention my martial arts work, especially Warrior's Path, the epic journey of modern karate, Dragon Kempo 2.0, and the Dragon Kempo 2.0 Belt Manual series. These books are built for people who understand that martial arts aren't about cosplay, trophies, or pretending kata is magic. They're about structure, discipline, timing, distance, body mechanics, self-defense, controlled aggression, and the hard work of becoming more capable without becoming a fool. The Dragon Kempo 2.0 series includes manuals for the belt ranks, plus practical kata and application for students and instructors who want a system with spine. Search Shawn Armstrong, Dragon Kempo 2.0, and Super Gringo books. Train seriously or don't waste your own time.
Every time I tried to stand, they pushed me down. Now I've had enough, can't take it all around. It's time to be strong, time to be clear. No more being used, it's time to repair. No more Mr. Nice Guy, I'm through. Time to stand up, let the world see. No more being weak, it's time to break. I'm done with the pain, I'll take my place.
Let's start with the first lie. The lie says this: if you can't hurt anyone, you're good. No, you're harmless. There's a difference. A man who can't fight may be peaceful. He may also simply be incapable. A man who avoids conflict may be wise. He may also be afraid. A man who never raises his voice may be disciplined. He may also be weak, passive, resentful, and quietly waiting for some indirect way to punish everyone around him. This is why you can't judge virtue by surface softness. Some of the most toxic people you will ever meet aren't loud. They don't kick doors, they don't punch walls, they don't threaten anyone directly. They smile, they flatter, they manipulate, they undermine, they gossip, they poison relationships, they play victim while loading the knife. And because they look harmless, people mistake them for good. That's a mistake. The idea of becoming the source material makes the point through the idea of becoming a monster, then learning to control it. Now, people hear the word monster and immediately start clutching pearls like the English department just found testosterone in the water supply. But the point isn't be evil. The point is capacity. You need the capacity for aggression. You need the capacity for confrontation. You need the capacity to say no. You need the capacity to resist. You need the capacity to stand between predators and victims. You need the capacity to take a hit, return pressure, and not fold the first time life gets ugly. And life will get ugly. Life doesn't care about your theory of kindness. Life doesn't care about your inspirational quote. Life doesn't care about how many times you said, "I'm a good person," into a camera while filming yourself at a coffee shop. Life tests you. People test you. Predators test you. Institutions test you. Pain tests you. And if all you have is softness, you're going to get chewed up. This is obvious in martial arts. A good martial arts instructor is not trying to create violent people. A good instructor is trying to create controlled people. There's a massive difference. You train someone to punch so they don't panic when they have to defend themselves. You train someone to block so they understand impact. You train someone to move so they don't freeze. You train someone to control distance because distance is survival. You train people to understand balance, pressure, and timing. And if the instructor knows what he's doing, he teaches restraint. He teaches avoidance. He teaches discipline. He teaches that the best fight is the one you had the sense to avoid. But here's the part modern culture hates. Avoiding a fight means more when you can win one. If you avoid a fight because you're disciplined, that's wisdom. If you avoid a fight because you're terrified, that's fear wearing a respectable jacket. A lot of people confuse those two because they want cheap virtue. They want to be called good without becoming incapable. They want moral credit for being non-threatening. They want applause for having no teeth. That works in a society that's been insulated from danger for too long. It doesn't work anywhere else. Ask anyone who's lived in the real world. Ask veterans. Ask police officers. Ask security professionals. Ask people who grew up in rough neighborhoods. Ask women who've had to learn real boundary setting because creepy men don't respect slogans. Ask immigrants who had to start over without a safety net. Ask martial artists who understand what happens when theory meets concrete. The world isn't safe because everyone is nice. The world is safe when decent people are capable enough to keep indecent people in check. That's true at every level, in the home, in the streets, in the community, in politics, in foreign policy, in civilization. Weakness invites pressure. Strength creates boundaries. Controlled strength creates peace. Uncontrolled strength creates tyranny. Weakness pretending to be virtue creates victims, and victims who become bitter can become dangerous in ugly, indirect, poisonous ways. We need to stop lying to young men about this. Young men don't need to be told they're defective because they have energy. They don't need to be told that every competitive impulse is toxic. They don't need to be told that wanting to win is morally suspicious. They need to be taught how to win honorably. They need to be taught how to lose without falling apart. They need to be taught how to use strength in service of something higher than ego. They need to be taught that aggression isn't automatically evil. Uncontrolled aggression is evil. Aggression without conscience is evil. Aggression aimed at the innocent is evil. But aggression under discipline can protect. It can defend. It can build. It can rescue. It can stop a bully. It can stop a criminal. It can stop a tyrant. It can stop the kind of person who only behaves when someone stronger enters the room. And yes, this applies to women too. Competence is not male property. Courage isn't male property. Self-defense isn't male property. Responsibility isn't male property. But the cultural attack has been aimed heavily at men, especially young men. So we're going to say that plainly instead of tiptoeing around the obvious like it has a restraining order. Young men are being told, be passive, agreeable, soft, harmless, apologetic, and endlessly self-suspicious. Then the same culture complains when they lack confidence, direction, purpose, emotional control, and courage. That's like starving someone and then mocking them for being thin. The answer isn't to turn the boys into savages. The answer is to turn boys into disciplined men. And that requires acknowledging the aggressive part, training it, shaping it, and putting it under command. Because if you refuse to train it, it doesn't disappear. It becomes resentment. It becomes cowardice. It becomes fantasy. It becomes passive aggression. It becomes addiction. It becomes rage behind a blank stare. It becomes the kind of man who can't protect anyone, can't lead anyone, can't handle rejection, can't handle failure, and can't handle the fact that the world doesn't owe him applause for existing. A harmless man may never hurt anyone because he can't. A virtuous man doesn't hurt the innocent because he chooses not to. That choice is what makes virtue real. Without capacity, there's no restraint. Without restraint, there's no discipline. Without discipline, strength becomes danger. Without strength, peace becomes fantasy. So when I hear people mock the idea that a person should become formidable, I hear people arguing for helplessness. And they always dress it up in nice language, gentleness, safety, sensitivity, compassion, inclusion, kindness. Beautiful words, but words can become camouflage for weakness. Kindness without courage is fragile. Compassion without boundaries becomes self-destruction. Peace without strength becomes surrender, and surrender isn't a moral philosophy. It's what happens when you run out of options. Now let's move into the second piece, responsibility. The source material makes a point that should be obvious, which means modern society has probably spent 60 years avoiding it. Rights and responsibility belong together. You can't build a serious life on rights alone. You can't build a family on rights alone. You can't build a nation on rights alone. You can't build a free society on rights alone. Rights protect you from abuse. Responsibility makes you worthy of freedom. That line will irritate some people. Good. Let it work. Freedom isn't the same thing as impulse. A toddler follows impulses. A drunk follows impulses. An addict follows impulses. A weak man follows impulses. A citizen governs them. That's the difference. The modern West has become very good at teaching rights. Students can recite grievances before they can balance a checkbook. They can identify oppression in a sandwich menu. They can explain personal boundaries as long as those boundaries only apply to other people. They know how to say, I have a right. They're much less fluent in saying, I have a duty. And that's a serious problem, because rights language without responsibility creates a culture of entitlement. Everything becomes a demand. Give me safety. Give me comfort. Give me validation. Give me money. Give me status. Give me forgiveness. Give me a platform. Give me respect. Give me success. Give me protection from consequences. And if life refuses, then life is unjust. No, sometimes life is hard because life is hard. Sometimes you failed because you failed. Sometimes people don't respect you because you haven't become respectable. Sometimes you're lonely because you're difficult to be around. Sometimes your career is stagnant because you're lazy. Sometimes your relationships are broken because you're selfish. Sometimes you're angry at society because it's easier than admitting you have been undisciplined for 10 years. I know. Personal responsibility. Hide the children. Responsibility isn't cruelty. Responsibility is the price of adulthood. Take responsibility for your body. Take responsibility for your mind. Take responsibility for your family. Take responsibility for your word. Take responsibility for your conduct. Take responsibility for what you consume. Take responsibility for what you tolerate. Take responsibility for your anger. Take responsibility for your failures. And when you do fail, own it, correct it, and drive on. That's how adults function. It's not complicated. It's simply unpopular because it leaves fewer places to hide. A culture that worships rights but rejects responsibility becomes unstable. You see it in politics. Every group wants benefits. Every politician promises benefits. Every activist wants recognition. Every institution wants authority. Every agency wants funding. Every citizen wants services. But when the bill comes due, everyone suddenly becomes a philosopher. Who should pay? Who should serve? Who should sacrifice? Who should tell the truth? Who should maintain order? Who should defend the country? Who should raise disciplined children? Who should preserve the institutions? Who should admit that freedom requires limits? Apparently, nobody. The ghost of accountability will handle it. Very efficient. This is why responsibility gives life meaning. Happiness is unstable. Pleasure is temporary. Comfort fades. Entertainment gets boring. Status can vanish, but responsibility roots you. A man responsible for his family wakes up with a reason. A woman responsible for her children has a mission. A citizen responsible for his country has a stake in the future. A teacher responsible for students thinks beyond his ego. A martial artist responsible for his discipline trains when he doesn't feel like training. A soldier responsible for the man next to him learns very quickly that feelings don't carry ammunition. Responsibility gives weight to life. And people need weight. Without weight, they drift. And drifting people become easy to manipulate. That's why political systems that want control often attack responsibility. They don't always say it openly. They say they're liberating you. They say they're freeing you from old burdens. They say family is oppressive. Tradition is oppressive. Religion is oppressive. Standards are oppressive. Borders are oppressive. Merit is oppressive. Discipline is oppressive. Masculinity is oppressive. Authority is oppressive. Then, after they destroy every structure that once helped people govern themselves, they offer the state as a substitute parent. Funny how that works. Break the legs, sell the crutches. Very humanitarian. This is why the rights-only worldview is politically useful. A responsible citizen is hard to control. A dependent citizen is easy. A responsible citizen asks, "What's my duty?" A dependent citizen asks, "What am I owed?" A responsible citizen can say no to propaganda because he has standards outside the propaganda machine. A dependent citizen needs approval from the machine. A responsible citizen can survive discomfort. A dependent citizen can be steered by comfort. A responsible citizen builds. A dependent citizen consumes. This is where the idea of becoming formidable ties directly into citizenship. You can't defend rights if you can't carry responsibility. You can't defend free speech if you're afraid of disagreement. You can't defend religious liberty if you have no conviction. You can't defend property rights if you think envy is economics. You can't defend self-defense if you think every weapon is magic, evil metal. You can't defend the Constitution if you treat it like an old menu from a restaurant you never visited. Freedom requires adults, and adults require self-command. The same rule applies in the home. Parents who can't control themselves can't raise disciplined children. A father who can't govern his temper will either terrorize the house or retreat from leadership entirely. A mother who can't set boundaries will train children to become tyrants with snack preferences. And a home without responsibility becomes a rehearsal space for social chaos. Children need love. They also need structure. They need affection. They also need correction. They need freedom. They also need limits. And if you don't teach them limits, the world will. The world isn't gentle about it. This is why the old language of duty mattered. Duty to God, duty to family, duty to country, duty to neighbor, duty to truth, duty to your own word. Modern people like to sneer at that language because it sounds old-fashioned. But old-fashioned doesn't mean false. Indoor plumbing is old too, but I notice even progressives still use toilets. Some things endure because they work. Duty works. Responsibility works. Discipline works. Standards work. Training works. Truth works. Pretending they don't work because they make weak people uncomfortable isn't moral progress. It's cultural vandalism with better lighting. A rights-only culture makes people loud. A responsibility culture makes people strong. And strong people don't need to scream about every inconvenience. They handle things. They adapt. They endure. They protect. They build. They correct themselves. They know life is unfair, but they don't make unfairness their whole personality. So when we talk about being a controlled monster, we're really talking about responsibility. The capacity for force must be governed by conscience. The capacity for speech must be governed by truth. The capacity for freedom must be governed by duty. The capacity for anger must be governed by discipline. The capacity for ambition must be governed by honor. Otherwise, every human strength becomes a public hazard, and every human weakness becomes someone else's problem. This is a good time to mention Tactical Training with Firearms and Long-Range Shooting, Zen or Science. Those books are for people who understand that serious tools require serious minds. Firearms are not political jewelry. They're not personality accessories. They're not props for people who confuse noise with competence. Training matters. Safety matters. Legal awareness matters. Mental discipline matters. In Tactical Training with Firearms, I deal with self-defense, safety, de-escalation, drills, survivability, and the mindset needed around force. In Long-Range Shooting, Zen or Science, I get into precision, wind, terrain, position, ballistics, and ethical long-range practice. Search Shawn Armstrong and Super Gringo books. Competence first, ego last. Now we get to one of the dumbest ideas modern culture has managed to mass produce. The idea that competence is suspicious, especially masculine competence. If a man is confident, he's arrogant. If he's strong, he's threatening. If he's disciplined, he's rigid. If he leads, he's controlling. If he protects, he's paternalistic. If he competes, he's toxic. If he wins, he must have cheated. If he loses and takes it like a man, he's emotionally repressed. If he shows emotion, he's performing vulnerability wrong. There's no winning this game because the game was designed by people who hate the player. The source material points out that society has tried to associate masculine competence and power with tyranny. That's poison. And it harms men and women. It harms men because it teaches them to distrust their own strength. It harms women because it leaves them surrounded by men who've been trained to be passive, confused, and apologetic. Then those same women ask where the strong men went. Well, a lot of them were shamed into silence, medicated into dullness, mocked into retreat, or told by every institution that their natural drive was a social disease. Again, who could have predicted consequences? Probably anyone not paid by a university diversity office. Let's be clear. Tyranny is real. Abuse is real. Male violence is real. Cruelty is real. Bad men exist. Cowardly men exist. Predatory men exist. Every serious man knows this. Women know it too, often earlier and more personally. So the answer isn't to pretend all masculine strength is good. That would be stupid. The answer is to distinguish between disciplined strength and predatory strength, between protector and bully, between leader and tyrant, between warrior and thug, between father and dictator, between confidence and narcissism, between command presence and insecurity wearing boots. Modern culture struggles with distinction because distinction requires thought. It's much easier to flatten everything into labels. Masculine equals toxic. Aggression equals violence. Authority equals oppression. Discipline equals trauma. Standards equal exclusion. Merit equals privilege. The beauty of that worldview is that it lets weak people sound wise while understanding almost nothing. Competence isn't tyranny. Competence is the antidote to chaos. When a pipe bursts in your house, you want a competent plumber. When your kid needs surgery, you want a competent surgeon. When your plane hits turbulence, you want a competent pilot. When your neighborhood gets dangerous, you want competent police. When your country is threatened, you want competent soldiers. When your child is learning discipline, you want competent parents. When violence appears, you want competent good men and women nearby. Nobody in that moment says, please send me a harmless person with inclusive language and no useful skills. No, when reality shows up, ideology shuts up. The attack on competence is mostly a luxury belief. People can pretend strength is bad when other people are providing security. They can pretend police are unnecessary while living in neighborhoods where someone else keeps order. They can pretend military strength is barbaric while sleeping under the protection of a nation other people defended. They can sneer at self-defense while assuming someone will answer when they call 911. They can mock masculine protectiveness while relying on men to do dangerous jobs, repair infrastructure, fight fires, confront violent criminals, and pull bodies out of wreckage. This is the pattern. Criticize strength, depend on strength, then criticize the people who provide it. That's not moral sophistication. That's dependency with a microphone. And this is where martial arts gives us a useful model. A real martial artist doesn't train to become a bully. A real martial artist trains to become controlled. You learn how little you know. You learn how quickly things can go wrong. You learn that distance matters. You learn that timing matters. You learn that pain is a teacher with poor bedside manner. You learn that fear can be managed. You learn that panic burns energy. You learn that confidence must be earned through repetition. You learn that the body doesn't care about slogans. You learn that humility is easier after someone dumps you on a mat. Training teaches competence. Competence produces confidence. Confidence reduces fear. Reduced fear reduces the need to posture, and people who don't need to posture are generally safer to be around. That's something critics of strength rarely understand. Weak men often posture more than strong men. Insecure men talk more than dangerous men. Untrained men fantasize more than trained men. The guy who's never been hit is often the guy with the biggest mouth. The guy who has been hit, thrown, choked, and humbled in training tends to understand that violence is not entertainment. It's ugly, it's fast, it's risky, it can ruin lives. That understanding creates restraint. Not always, because humans remain stubborn animals with car keys, but often. This is why proper training matters. Strength without training is crude. Training without morality is dangerous. Morality without strength is fragile. You need all three: strength, training, moral restraint. That's the triangle. Break one side and you create problems. Now let's apply that politically. A republic needs citizens with competence, not mobs, not dependents, not spectators, citizens. People who can read, think, work, argue, defend their rights, control their impulses, raise children, serve communities, handle responsibility, see through propaganda, recognize manipulation, and stand firm when institutions try to treat them like livestock with streaming subscriptions. That requires competence. Incompetence threatens people who profit from dependency. An incompetent population needs managers. A frightened population needs protectors. A confused population needs experts. A passive population needs rulers. A divided population needs handlers. That's why every serious political movement eventually has to answer one question. Do you want citizens or clients? A citizen stands upright. A client waits for benefits. A citizen has duties. A client has demands. A citizen argues from principle. A client argues from appetite. A citizen can say no. A client asks permission. This is why the war on competence is also a war on citizenship. The same culture that tells young men to be harmless tells citizens to be dependent. That same culture that treats strength as suspicious treats self-reliance as extremist. The same culture that mocks discipline demands obedience to bureaucracy. Funny how discipline is oppressive when it comes from fathers, coaches, instructors, pastors, and old school teachers, but suddenly holy when it comes from government agencies, HR departments, activist committees, and anonymous moderators. Apparently, authority is only bad when it tells you to grow up. Competence isn't tyranny. Tyranny is power without moral limits. Competence is ability. A competent man can become a tyrant if he lacks virtue, but an incompetent man can become a coward, a parasite, a manipulator, or a useful idiot. Weakness doesn't save you from evil. It just limits your options when evil arrives. So the goal is not weak men. The goal is good men. Good men who are strong enough to act. Good women who are strong enough to speak. Good citizens who are strong enough to resist. Good parents who are strong enough to discipline. Good leaders who are strong enough to tell the truth. Good fighters who are strong enough to avoid unnecessary fights. Good people who understand that peace isn't created by pretending danger doesn't exist. When you teach people that all strength is oppression, you don't remove oppression. You remove the people capable of opposing it. And then actual tyrants have a clean lane, because the decent people are busy apologizing for having a spine. Now we need to talk about the part everyone wants to avoid, the shadow. The source material uses that language to describe the parts of yourself you don't want to face. Your capacity for cruelty, your capacity for resentment, your capacity for revenge, your capacity for domination, your capacity for cowardice, your capacity for betrayal, your capacity for rationalizing evil while calling it necessity. Most people don't want to think about that. They want evil to be something over there in history, over there in the dictator, over there in the criminal, over there in the other political party, over there in the extremist, over there in the person with the bad haircut and the uniform in the documentary. That's comfortable. It's also false. The uncomfortable truth is that ordinary people can do terrible things under the right pressures, incentives, fears, and permissions. That doesn't mean everyone is equally evil. It doesn't mean moral judgment is impossible. It doesn't mean victims and perpetrators are the same. Don't be stupid. It means human beings are not as clean as they pretend. And if you don't understand your own capacity for darkness, you're more vulnerable to it. People like to study Nazi Germany or the Soviet Union and imagine the perpetrators were aliens, monsters from another species, creatures made from different material. No, they were people, human beings, fathers, mothers, clerks, officers, teachers, neighbors, bureaucrats, cowards, true believers, careerists, social climbers, resentful losers, ambitious functionaries, people who wanted safety, people who wanted status, people who wanted revenge, people who wanted to belong, people who wanted to avoid punishment, people who told themselves they were serving history, serving equality, serving the nation, serving progress, serving justice, serving the future. Human beings can commit evil with paperwork and clean fingernails. That's the part polite society hates to admit. Everyone wants to imagine they would have resisted. Everyone thinks they would have hidden the innocent. Everyone thinks they would have spoken up. Everyone thinks they would have refused the order. Everyone thinks they would have stood in the doorway and said, no. Maybe, maybe not. History is full of dead people who found out how rare courage is. This is why self-knowledge matters. If you know you're capable of cowardice, you can train courage. If you know you're capable of cruelty, you can train restraint. If you know you're capable of resentment, you can train gratitude. If you know you're capable of revenge, you can train justice. If you know you're capable of lying, you can train truthfulness. If you know you're capable of weakness, you can train strength. But if you believe you're naturally pure, you're already compromised. Self-righteousness is one of the evil's favorite disguises. This is where modern politics becomes disgusting. Every faction wants to outsource evil to the enemy. The left says evil is on the right. The right says evil is on the left. The state says evil is in the extremist. The activist says evil is in the system. The bureaucrat says evil is in the non-compliant. The mob says evil is in the accused. The accused says evil is in the mob. And sometimes they're right. But nobody wants to ask, what am I capable of? Because that question ruins the performance. It's much easier to accuse. It's much easier to posture. It's much easier to denounce. It's much easier to signal virtue. It's much easier to slap a label on someone and declare yourself clean. Racist, fascist, communist, traitor, Nazi, bigot, extremist, terrorist, threat. Once you label someone as pure evil, you no longer have to treat them as human. And once you stop treating people as human, you can justify almost anything. That's how moral language becomes a weapon. That doesn't mean labels are never accurate. Some people are racists. Some people are communists. Some people are fascists. Some people are traitors. Some people are threats. Reality has categories, but a serious person uses categories carefully. A lazy person uses them like a club, and a malicious person uses them like a permission slip. This is why integrating the shadow matters politically. A citizen who understands his own darker impulses is less likely to be seduced by mass hatred. He knows the thrill of feeling superior. He knows the temptation to punish. He knows the pleasure of seeing an enemy humiliated. He knows the emotional rush of belonging to a righteous group. He knows how easy it is to confuse vengeance with justice. So he becomes cautious. Not weak, cautious. Cautious with power, cautious with crowds, cautious with slogans, cautious with leaders who demand moral panic. Cautious with movements that promise purification. Cautious with institutions that say, trust us, we know who the bad people are. That caution isn't cowardice, it's wisdom. Because once a society gives itself permission to hate, the machine starts moving. And the people inside the machine always have reasons. They always have experts. They always have slogans. They always have emergency powers. They always have moral language. They always have children to protect. They always have history on their side. They always have a future to build. They always have enemies to destroy. And they always insist this time is different. It's never that different. Human nature has a boring commitment to repetition. Now bring this back to the individual. If you don't understand your own capacity for harm, You can't be trusted with power. That includes physical power, political power, parental power, institutional power, spiritual power, intellectual power, any power. A parent who doesn't understand his own anger may take revenge on a child while calling it discipline. A teacher who doesn't understand her own resentment may undermine a student while calling it standards. A politician who doesn't understand his own ambition may destroy liberty while calling it reform. A pastor who doesn't understand his own pride may manipulate the faithful while calling it leadership. A police officer who doesn't understand his own fear may overreact while calling it control. A soldier who doesn't understand his own aggression may cross lines while calling it mission focus. A citizen who doesn't understand his own envy may vote for the theft while calling it fairness. That's not theory. This is human behavior, dressed up however you want. It still stinks when it rots. Source material mentions discipline of children in relation to knowing your darker side. That's important. A parent who understands that he can lose control is more likely to build systems to prevent it. He steps away. He lowers his voice. He sets clear rules. He corrects early instead of exploding late. He doesn't wait until anger turns into rage. He knows that children need discipline, but they don't need adult emotional discharge dumped on them like sewage. That's responsibility. That's strength under control. That's the monster in the cage, not the monster running the house. And let's be honest, a lot of adults don't discipline children. They negotiate with them like tiny hostage takers. They plead, they bargain, they threaten and do nothing. They let children run the house, then act shocked when the child becomes unbearable. Children need love, yes, but love without discipline is negligence with nicer branding. A child who never learns boundaries becomes an adult who thinks every limit is oppression. Congratulations, you've manufactured a future activist, HR nightmare, and customer service incident. Possibly all three. Discipline isn't abuse. Abuse is abuse. Discipline is structure. Discipline is correction. Discipline is consistency. Discipline is teaching a child that actions have consequences before the legal system has to explain it with handcuffs. If you love children, you prepare them for reality. You don't raise them in a padded fantasy and then blame the world for having corners. The same applies to yourself. Self-discipline is self-respect. You treat yourself like someone worth commanding. You don't let every appetite drive the vehicle. You don't let every anger become speech. You don't let every fear become policy. You don't let every wound become identity. You don't let every desire become a right. You don't let every resentment become a worldview. That's what it means to govern yourself. And here's the hard truth. If you don't govern yourself, something else will. Your appetite will, your fear will, your anger will, your addiction will, your tribe will, your government will, your algorithm will, your resentment will. Something will take command. There's no neutral setting. You either have it or it has you. That's why facing the shadow isn't optional for serious people. It's required. Not because it feels good, it doesn't. Not because it's inspirational, it's usually humiliating. Not because it makes you happy, it may make you uncomfortable for a long time, but it makes you honest. And honest people are harder to manipulate. When you know the monster inside you, you stop pretending monsters only exist outside you. That makes you more careful, more disciplined, more realistic, and more dangerous to liars, because liars depend on people who either deny evil or outsource it completely. A serious person knows better. He knows evil can wear his own face. So he trains, he watches himself, he accepts correction, he builds habits, he submits strength to principle, and if necessary, he fights. But he doesn't worship the fight. He doesn't become the fight. He remains in command. This episode also lines up with two of my civics books, Reclaiming Our Ideals and Dismantling the Republic. Reclaiming Our Ideals deals with foundational principles, natural law, consent, property, virtue, and moral drift. Dismantling the Republic deals with citizenship decline, tribalism, bureaucratic power, constitutional erosion, and the political machinery that turns citizens into managed groups. If you want more than bumper sticker politics and shallow outrage, search Shawn Armstrong and Super Gringo books. Read something that expects you to think. Terrible burden, I know. Now we bring it home. Peace requires strength under control, not weakness, not passivity, not fear, not endless appeasement, strength under control. This applies to individuals, it applies to families, it applies to communities, it applies to nations. It applies everywhere human beings interact because human beings aren't angels. Some people are decent, some people are predators. Most people are somewhere in the messy middle, trying to live, failing often, rationalizing more than they should, and occasionally doing the right thing despite themselves. That's humanity. Charming species. Needs supervision. A peaceful man with no capacity for force is peaceful until force is required. Then he becomes dependent on someone else. That may be unavoidable in some cases. Nobody can be strong in every way. Nobody can master every skill. We all depend on others. But as a general philosophy, helplessness isn't noble. It's a liability. A society full of helpless people becomes a society ruled by whoever isn't helpless. That's usually not the nicest group in the room. If you want peace in your own life, become capable. Get your body under control. Get your mouth under control. Get your finances under control. Get your anger under control. Get your habits under control. Learn how to defend yourself. Learn how to think clearly. Learn how to recognize manipulation. Learn how to say no. Learn how to keep your word. Learn how to walk away from foolishness. Learn how to stand your ground when walking away would be cowardice. That's peace through discipline. If you want peace in the home, build order, not tyranny, order. Clear expectations, clear consequences, clear roles, love with standards. Affection with boundaries. Correction without cruelty. Apologies when you're wrong. Firmness when firmness is required. Homes don't become peaceful because everyone follows their impulses. Homes become peaceful when people practice responsibility. If you want peace in a community, support standards. Stop excusing criminal behavior because you like the political narrative around it. Stop pretending disorder is compassion. Stop calling accountability hatred. Stop acting like public safety is some weird luxury good for people you resent. Good people deserve safe streets. Children deserve safe schools. Workers deserve safe businesses. Families deserve neighborhoods where law-abiding people are not treated like suckers. That requires boundaries. Boundaries require enforcement. Enforcement requires strength. Strength requires moral clarity. And moral clarity requires people willing to be called mean by idiots. If you want peace in a nation, maintain deterrence. This is where foreign policy gets very simple. Despite the best efforts of academics to make it sound like wet cardboard, weak nations invite aggression. Confused nations invite testing. Divided nations invite pressure. Strong nations with clear interests and credible force are harder to bully. That doesn't mean every problem needs a war. Only fools want war. Anyone who has seen what war does should be allergic to casual war talk. But not wanting war isn't the same as refusing strength. In fact, strength is one of the ways you prevent war. Predators calculate. Bullies calculate. Dictators calculate. Terrorists calculate. Criminals calculate. They ask, what will this cost me? If the answer is nothing, they continue. If the answer is more than I can afford, they reconsider. That's not warmongering. That's reality before it gets processed into committee language. The same principle works with bullies. The source material points out that confidence can make bullies back off. That's often true. Not always. Nothing is always, but often. Bullies look for easy targets. They look for uncertainty. They look for fear. They look for people who will comply. A confident response can change the calculation. A firm boundary can change the calculation. A person who looks like he might be more trouble than he's worth can change the calculation. That's why competence prevents fights, because predators prefer low-risk prey. Yes, that sounds harsh. Reality often does. It refuses to attend sensitivity training. This is why the idea of meekness is often misunderstood. People hear meek and think weak, timid, soft, passive, cowering. That's not the deeper idea. The deeper idea is strength under control, a sword kept sheathed, a person who can act but doesn't act without cause, a person who has power but doesn't abuse it, a person who can confront but doesn't seek conflict for entertainment. That's the model. powerful and peaceful, formidable and restrained, dangerous and disciplined. That order matters. Powerful, then peaceful. Formidable, then restrained. Dangerous, then disciplined. If you reverse the order, you get fantasy. You can't restrain what doesn't exist. You can't control strength you never developed. You can't choose peace from a position of total helplessness and call it moral superiority. Again, maybe you're a good person, but the peace isn't fully chosen if violence was never an option. Virtue requires choice. Now, I know some people hate this because it sounds harsh. They want morality to be clean. They want goodness without conflict. They want peace without force. They want justice without judgment. They want safety without enforcement. They want freedom without responsibility. They want adulthood without discipline. They want children without authority. They want civilization without borders. They want rights without duties. They want compassion without cost. They want strength available on demand, but they don't want to respect the people who build and carry it. That worldview is childish. An adult civilization can't be built on childish fantasies. A mature worldview understands tension, mercy and justice, freedom and order, strength and restraint, rights and duties, compassion and consequences, individual liberty and civic obligation, self-expression and self-command. The modern mind hates tension because tension requires maturity. It wants one-word answers: love, justice, equity, safety, freedom, peace. Fine words. But every fine word becomes dangerous when severed from reality. Peace without strength becomes surrender. Freedom without responsibility becomes decay. Justice without truth becomes revenge. Safety without liberty becomes control. Compassion without judgment becomes enabling. Strength without restraint becomes abuse. This is why adults have to think in pairs: rights and responsibilities, power and restraint, courage and humility, love and discipline. This is also why martial arts, at their best, are not hobbies. They're moral training. You train the body, you train the mind, you train your fear response, you train respect, you train restraint, you train repetition. You learn that progress is earned. You learn that rank without skill is empty. You learn that confidence without humility gets corrected. You learn that pain is information. You learn that discipline is freedom because it gives you command over yourself. That's why serious martial arts are dangerous to a soft culture. They teach reality. Soft cultures prefer feelings. And let's not romanticize martial arts either. There are bad instructors. There are frauds. There are trophy factories. There are people selling fantasy self-defense to students who will get hurt if they ever believe it. There are black belts who can't fight. There are tough guys who should never be allowed near students. There are systems that become choreography with invoices. That exists. But the answer to bad training isn't no training. The answer is honest training, pressure-tested training, ethical training, practical training, training that teaches humility and capability together. The same goes for politics. Bad authority exists. That doesn't mean all authority is evil. Bad police exist. That doesn't mean law enforcement is evil. Bad soldiers exist. That doesn't mean national defense is evil. Bad fathers exist. That doesn't mean fatherhood is evil. Bad men exist. That doesn't mean masculinity is evil. Bad institutions exist. That doesn't mean institutions are unnecessary. A civilization that can't distinguish abuse from proper authority will eventually destroy authority and then wonder why abuse got worse. Because when legitimate authority collapses, illegitimate authority fills the space. Every time. The real question isn't whether power exists. Power always exists. The question is who holds it, how it's trained, what limits it, and what moral vision governs it. Do you want power in the hands of disciplined citizens, or do you want power monopolized by criminals, bureaucrats, mobs, and political machines? Those are your choices. There's no power-free society. There's only power you can see and power pretending it is compassion. So yes, become strong, become competent, become dangerous in the controlled sense. Become someone who can protect. Become someone who can resist. Become someone who can endure. Become someone who can tell the truth when the room gets cold. Become someone who can walk away from provocation. Become someone who can confront evil when walking away would betray the innocent. Become someone whose peace means something. But don't become cruel. Don't become arrogant. Don't become a bully. Don't become the kind of person who confuses intimidation with leadership. Don't become the clown who learns 3 techniques and starts looking for trouble in gas stations. Don't become the man who uses strength to compensate for an empty character. Don't become the woman who calls cruelty empowerment. Don't become the citizen who calls revenge justice. Don't become the leader who calls control compassion. The monster must be governed. If it's not governed, it governs you. That's the final point. You either master your capacity for harm, or your capacity for harm will master you. You either discipline your strength, or your strength will turn into abuse. You either discipline your weakness, or your weakness will turn into resentment. You either discipline your fear, or your fear will become your politics. You either discipline your appetite, or your appetite will become your owner. You either discipline your anger, or your anger will choose your targets. There's no escape from discipline. You either choose it, or consequences choose it for you. Before the outro, I want to mention the Ramadi trilogy, Into the Gray City, House to House, and Echoes in the Dust. This is military fiction built from the dirt-level view of war, not sanitized hero posters and cheap patriotic wallpaper. It follows an infantry platoon through Ramadi, through the slow grounding of urban war and into the aftermath that follows men home after the shooting stops. If you want war fiction with grit, consequence, and moral weight, search Shawn Armstrong, the Ramadi trilogy, and Super Gringo books. War doesn't end cleanly. The books don't pretend otherwise. Let's close this out. The message today is simple. Stop confusing harmlessness with virtue. Stop confusing weakness with peace. Stop confusing passivity with goodness. Stop confusing responsibility with oppression. Stop confusing masculine competence with tyranny. Stop confusing emotional softness with moral depth. Stop confusing slogans with civilization. A good person isn't someone who lacks the ability to do harm. A good person is someone who has faced that ability, trained it, disciplined it, and placed it under moral command. That's the difference. A harmless person may behave because he can't do otherwise. A disciplined person behaves because he chooses to. That choice matters. That choice is where virtue lives. We need stronger people, not cruel people, not reckless people, not loud people, not chest-thumping idiots with podcast microphones and unresolved childhood problems. We need stronger people, fathers with discipline, mothers with standards, teachers with courage, citizens with backbone, leaders with restraint, young men with purpose, young women with boundaries, martial artists with humility, soldiers with honor, pastors with conviction, politicians with accountability, though apparently now we're drifting into science fiction. We need people who can carry rights because they accept duties. We need people who can demand freedom because they practice self-control. We need people who can speak about justice without becoming drunk on revenge. We need people who can pursue peace without worshiping weakness. We need people who know the shadow is real because they found it in themselves. And because they found it there, they're less likely to unleash it on everyone else. This isn't an easy message. Good. Easy messages are usually sold by people who want applause more than truth. The truth is harder. You're capable of more than comfort. You're capable of more than complaint. You're capable of more than resentment. You're capable of strength. You're capable of discipline. You're capable of responsibility. You're capable of being formidable without becoming evil. But nobody can do that work for you. No government program can give you character. No activist slogan can give you courage. No therapist can carry your responsibility. No politician can make you an adult. No institution can replace self-command. At some point, you have to stand up inside your own life and take charge. That means training. That means duty. That means correction. That means failure. That means telling yourself no. That means facing the parts of yourself you would rather blame on other people. That means building the kind of strength that doesn't need to advertise itself every 5 minutes. That means becoming peaceful because you're disciplined, not because you're helpless. A society that teaches people to be harmless will eventually be ruled by people who aren't. A society that teaches people to be strong, moral, responsible, and restrained has a chance. Not a guarantee, a chance. And in human history, a chance is worth taking seriously. So here's the final line. Be strong enough to be dangerous. Be disciplined enough to be peaceful. And be honest enough to know the difference. This has been Shawn Thinking Out Loud. I'm Shawn Armstrong. Until next time, think clearly, train seriously, and stop mistaking weakness for virtue.
Every time